It is the final episode of our very special series, Your Health, Your Wealth, Understanding Your Integrated Shield Plan Options, brought to you by Raffles Health Insurance. Over the last 6 weeks, we've helped you understand what an integrated shield plan is, or an IP, whether you need one, how much it could cost you to take on an IP at different stages of your life. And today we're capping off this series with a topic that I know weighs heavily on many people's minds because I've heard them raise questions over the years when we do talk about IPs. We're talking about pre existing conditions. What should you do if you have one and you're contemplating starting your IP journey? And what are your options when it comes to picking up an integrated shield plan for yourself? Can you even buy one? Well, there may be good news on the horizon for you if you've never heard of an integrated shield plan that fits your needs because you have a pre existing condition. To tell us more, we welcome Dr. Morrison Loh. He's head of the Medical Directorate, Raffles Health Insurance, and Director Commercial, Raffles Medical Group. Dr. Loh, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Michelle. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us. So,
Thank you for having me.
about pre-existing conditions being one of the reasons people think I'm not even going to look into buying an IP, an integrated shield plan. And we know there are lots of plans out there. There could be additional premiums if you take on a plan that does accept a pre-existing condition. We know that an IP sits on MediShield Life coverage, and that even with MediShield Life, you'll have to pay 30% additional premiums for something like the first 10 years for conditions if your pre-existing condition is listed amongst broad categories of serious pre-existing conditions like stroke, for example, schizophrenia, congenital heart disease. So a lot to get into for this show. I thought we'd start at the very beginning, Dr. Loh. What are pre-existing conditions and how do they affect IP coverage?
Hmm. I think the term pre-existing condition has always caused many confusion to many people, right? Technically, if I to strip off everything, to put it very simply forward, pre-existing condition basically means any medical conditions that you have developed before you sign up with an insurance plan. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be at birth, congenital. It could be developed later on in life. As long as the medical condition is developed or you found it before you sign up with a shield, insurance plan, that will be considered as pre-existing. Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about the link with IP coverage? I mean, what are some pre existing conditions that will likely not be covered by an integrated shield plan?
Mm. I guess the simplest condition I can think of offhand would be diabetes. Diabetes is a condition that has very commonly been excluded or declined by most of the integrated shield plan or other medical health insurance. So other things would be, for example, heart condition or severe respiratory condition like asthma. So these chronic conditions that would stay with the individual for life um, would most likely be declined when it comes to medical underwriting, which is a process the insurer looks at in terms of grading and decide whether or not the individual can be accepted into the insurance plan. Um,
So,
s-
go
go,
ahead, please.
go. Mm.
Did you want to add
S-
something?
Yeah, so I was just going to move into typically what happens during the process of medical underwriting.
Yes, that would be great. I think few of us have access to that.
Mm. So I think when an individual applies for health insurance, he or she must declare any medical conditions, chronic or not, that they have in the past. And at this stage in time, during the underwriting process, the medical underwriter of the insurance company will look at the different medical conditions and then decide the risk the individual has. There could be basically three broad decisions made after the medical underwriting process has taken place. The individual could be declined from being offered an insurance coverage. Um, the insurance coverage offered could be in part, basically, there's an exclusion clause. For example, if the individual has a heart condition, the insurer might say, okay, I will cover you for anything. For example, if you are met with a car accident or something like that, we'll cover you for the admission. But if you were to be presented a bill-sized claim for a heart condition, they will be excluded from an insurance coverage. So that will be the second decision. And the third one is what we call a technical term loading.
Mhm.
Basically means that you need to pay a slightly higher premium compared to an individual of the same age that is of a clean bill of health, because the risk of you needing to have a medical claim or medical condition is higher than someone who is healthy. Hence, the premium you pay will be higher, and hence there's a loading on top of the premium. So, in summary, there's three outcomes. If you have a pre-existing condition, you could be excluded, you could be declined coverage, or you can be covered in full, but with loading.
All right, that's very useful, I think. So, to the question, if I have a pre-existing condition and already have an IP, should I be looking at reviewing an IP? Is it risky for me to do so? Could I lose the IP I already have?
Mm. So this is also another point where many individuals get a bit confused. Um, Up until the point that you have been accepted into an insurance coverage, that you are being covered, any conditions developed then will not be considered pre-existing.
Mm.
So, if, for example, an individual who has his insurance coverage started at the start of this month, thereafter was diagnosed or found out to have a chronic condition like high blood pressure later on, it will be considered, you will not be considered pre-existing, and as such, he or she will be fully covered.
Okay, so then that buttresses the argument for buying an IP when you're younger. Why do you think some people then hesitate to buy an IP when they are young?
Very good question. I ask myself that question too every single day. I suppose, when you're young, the thought of you being sick, having to be admitted into hospital, doesn't really come into consideration. Most people who are young are generally healthier, and because of that, they usually throw caution to the wind. That's number one. Number two, also when you're young, you tend to have less spending power, and cost is something that is of consideration. So they tend to keep, I suppose, the money to things that are more immediately of importance. For example, starting a family and all. So all these things are pushed to the back. And thirdly, I think medical insurance is unlike many other insurance. It's always on a bit of an unfair situation. You think about it,
Hmm.
you don't really think about the requirement of having a proper medical insurance coverage um, until the day that you actually require one. For example, you don't think about insurance coverage or what kind of benefits you have until the point where you need to be admitted to a hospital, or there's some medical issues arising. But many a times, up to that point, it's often too late for you to then look into buying a proper health insurance coverage. So the advice we always give the general public or individuals would be, start to think about all these things young,
Yeah.
plan early, so that when it comes to the rainy day, you have proper coverage to protect you.
Okay, I want to drill down on this point of plan early because I understand you can get your hands on an IP for your child as young as 14, 15 days of age. So does
Mm.
this mean that I buy an IP for my child, later on they're diagnosed with diabetes, age 16, that's not going to stand in their way of them receiving coverage for diabetes because it won't be considered pre-existing because they got their IP at age 14 days. Is that
Absolutely
right?
correct. So
All
once
right,
it's
great.
think about it as once you enter, into the admission gate, you're covered.
Fantastic. So get in as early as possible. This is Your Health, Your Wealth, Understanding Your Integrated Shield Plan Options, brought to you by Raffles Health Insurance. Coming up, what sort of chronic conditions, pre-existing conditions, does Raffles Health Insurance consider for IP coverage? We're going to find out.
Speak to our Raffles Health Advisor to learn more about our Raffles Shield A plus Raffles Hospital option. For more information, visit www.raffleshealthinsurance.com.
My guest is Dr. Morrison Loh. He's head of Medical Directorate at Raffles Health Insurance and Director Commercial, Raffles Medical Group. We are talking about pre-existing conditions, how they impact your ability to get your hands on an integrated shield plan. Is there one for you? If you haven't got an IP plan yet, but you are aware that you have a pre-existing condition, let's find out right now. Dr. Loh, what sort of chronic conditions does Raffles Health Insurance take into consideration positively?
Mm. So Raffles Health Insurance is part of the integrated medical group, um, whereby we have a hospital and primary care. So when we set off to look into designing the integrated shield plan, we thought about many things, and many a times it is those people who have certain chronic condition that find themselves lacking of proper health insurance coverage. And when we think about this, we thought, okay, what can we do more to help them? So first thing we did was to look at the three top most common chronic condition, which is the three highs: high sugar, high pressure, and high cholesterol. So diabetes, which is high sugar, is a condition that has commonly and for the longest time been declined coverage by many of the insurers. So we thought, let's work together with the patient, with the individual, to partner them in health and to provide them coverage. So with that, we start off with the Raffles Care Management Program. We believe that by designing a program, working together with the individual, we can encourage them and give them impetus and incentive to take care of their own health, such that they can enjoy the full benefit of a good medical coverage. So as of today, I'm proud to say that Raffles Health Insurance is covering the three most common chronic conditions, which are diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. We are also looking forward to expanding that into our phase 2 of design, looking at areas such as mental health condition, obesity, and some other chronic condition that is very commonly found in our general public. Hopefully, we can reach that earlier and extend this proper coverage to more individuals who are of need.
That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you for giving us a look ahead at what you could be extending coverage to as well. I wonder if, for the present, you can share a case study of how an RHI approved application for what would be considered a pre existing condition that other insurers may not cover, how has that been able to make a difference in the cost of care for a patient?
Mm. Okay, let's just say we use an example of a 50-year-old gentleman, right? If I use a number, say if a healthy 50-year-old gentleman were to purchase an integrated shield plan, his annual premium, for example, would be say $400. However, if another individual with chronic high blood pressure who has been declined coverage for the longest time comes in to apply with us, we will assess his medical condition, and then after passing medical underwriting, we will grant him coverage. However, he or she, the gentleman will have to pay a loading, which is 25%. That amounts to an extra $100, which is less than $1 a day. He or she would get the full coverage, just as with the other healthy gentleman. And that's not all. If the individual takes an effort to take care of his or her his own health and manage to reduce his blood pressure, showing good progress and showing us medical reports, what we would do is subsequent year we will reduce the percentage loading up to a point whereby he'll be paying the same premium as the other healthy individual. So that's Raffles Care Management Program.
That is absolutely amazing that you're incentivized to take care of your health, so to speak. So, besides that, how does RHI IP allow for the management of chronic conditions? I mean, that alone is fantastic, reducing your
Mm.
costs. Are there other ways that RHI, encourages the management for chronic conditions?
Well, we work with many medical providers and partners, and the most obvious one will be our own integrated medical group to provide benefits and also initiatives to get them to live healthier. We have launched many webinars program, proper dietary, exercise, wellness, and also work with our core team of our medical provider partners and also other allied health partners to come up with programs, reminders, so digital messaging to help the individual to control their medical condition, to adhere to some of the guidelines, give them proper medical education, and promote healthy lifestyle. We believe that by doing that, he or she will become healthier, hence reducing the need to be admitted to hospital or requiring medical care. And you think about it, that is also to our benefit because we have less claim payout. So this working together as a partner will be a mutually beneficial sort of collaboration.
All right. So for listeners who are tuning in and they think this is the coverage that I need, I have high cholesterol. I thought that no IP would cover me, and here I see a glimmer of hope. Or I have diabetes, and this might be the IP Shield plan that works for me. But at the back of their mind, they're concerned: if I apply for a change, what does this mean for my existing coverage?
Mm. So if you are currently being insured with an insurer and you are looking to change to another insurer, you have to go through the medical underwriting process over again. And hence, any medical condition you have developed then will be considered as pre-existing, which might succumb you to that three decision bucket again by the new insurer, which is either exclusion, loading, or rejection.
Okay. So if you had purchased an IP plan prior to you taking and developing that pre-existing condition, then be aware that there's a possibility it could be rejected. There could be loading costs that you have to pay. But if you have never had an IP plan because you've assumed that my pre-existing condition just rules me out, there is hope that you will be accepted. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, wonderful. And for people listening in wondering, gosh, what happens then if I think about reviewing, but then I'm denied an IP? What happens to me if I have an existing IP plan?
So I think sometimes it's best to speak to a financial advisor or the insurance company to find out, okay, currently I'm being covered with a simple plan. If I choose to upgrade or I choose to switch over to a next company, my state of health is generally well. All right, there could be some preliminary discussion, what we call preliminary underwriting. We can advise you, okay, most likely you'll be covered, no problem. We'll just take over as it is. That's generally the case. Or there could be instances which you mentioned earlier. You would be covered. You might have to pay a slightly higher premium, but then this will be benefits that you enjoy as opposed to what you have now. It will be on case by case basis, but I suppose there's no harm to consider and to look deeper into the cost of switching from a different insurer.
All right, so always ask. Before we let you go, Dr. Loh, what are some key thinking points that people should touch on if they have pre-existing conditions and and they're considering an IP?
Mm.
What would you like them to
Um,
keep in mind?
So I think as a doctor, I will always stress the same thing. Take good care of your health. All right. If you have any medical conditions or any chronic condition, the most important thing, regardless of whether or not you purchase a medical insurance plan, will be to take good care of yourself. Right. Follow the rules given by the doctors in terms of medication, lifestyle. Right. Watch your diet and exercise. When you have your condition under control, you stand a better chance to get yourself medically covered through any insurance anyway, right? And then speak to your financial advisor, share with them openly these are the factors that you are worried about. These are the cost considerations, and this is your medical history. And then work together with the insurer and the financial advisor to then find the best possible plan for you.
Sound advice from the friendliest doctor we've had on air today. Thank you so much, Dr. Loh, for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
He's Dr. Morrison Loh, head of Medical Directorate, Raffles Health Insurance, and Director Commercial for Raffles Medical Group. Well, that's it. 7 episodes. You can listen to them all over again. We're on YouTube or check us out on StreamYard. This is Your Health, Your Wealth, Understanding Your Integrated Shield Plan Options. I'm Michelle Martin.
Money FM 89.3.